Welcome to Kuumba Nia Arts' Black Theatre Development Workshop Weekend. We are going to present this to you in 3 parts. Now, my name is Amra and I am the founder and artistic director of Kuumba Nia Arts.
Hi there, my name is John Sailsman and I'm the co-director of Kuumba Nia Arts.
This event was supposed to happen live and there would have been mingling, networking, food, but because of the realities that we've all faced with COVID-19 last year and going into this year, it is being presented to you online. Now, what we're really hoping to share with you today is a series of workshops and presentations which are looking at the true nature and the true theatrical aesthetics of Black theatre. John, say some more.
This event follows our recent symposium, The Origins, History and True Identity of Black British Theatre. And in the same way that we presented that, what we want to do is to provide you with practical and experiential examples of the true nature of the Black people's theatre in Britain.
Wonderful. Now, in order to do this, what we've done is we have assembled a team of experienced and well-respected and renowned practitioners, and we will be covering everything from dance to drumming to poetry to storytelling and history, because we can't move forward into our future without knowing our past. And that is where we're going to start. We're going to start with a presentation done by yourself, John. And what's your presentation going to be about?
The presentation follows the same route as the symposium.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the origins, history, and the true identity of Black British theatre. And what that means is that we're going to examine the roots of our theatre, a theatre, if you like, that goes back to even ancient Egypt or ancient Kemet, right up to the present day, and deals with also the way that throughout the colonialization of Africa, our form changed, if you like, into the kind of Eurocentric form of theatre that we present today.
Wonderful. So before John tells us too much, I'm going to hand over to John Sailsman, sharing with us his presentation on the origins, history, and true identity of Black British theatre. Over to you, John.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's get started. So what we want to do is to provide a context really for the workshop, and this presentation will look at the origins, history and true identity of Black British theatre, and we'll go through a lot of interesting information as we go along. So we want to start with the idea that theatre was started by the ancient Greeks. And Greek civilization actually started in 900 BC, where Egyptian civilization begun around 3100 BC. So we're probably, we're talking more than 2,000 years before Greek civilization even came into being. The pyramids of Giza were widely held to have been built between 2590 and 2504 BC, more than 1,000 years even before Greece was born. Greek theatre was made up of comedies, tragedies, choral performances, and could be thought to have begun with songs and dances in honour of Dionysus, patron god of around 534 BC. Priest of Dionysus by the name of Thespis introduced a new element into theatre, which is generally seen as the birth of theatre. He engages in dialogue with the chorus. He becomes, in effect, the first actor, and actors nowadays call themselves thespians, named after him. The actual word theatre originated in ancient Greece, but not only meant the building, if you like, or the amphitheatre that the plays were staged in, and not the process or the profession, as it's widely accepted it is today. Actually, the first recorded performance was a passion play of Abydos, which was around 2500 BC in ancient Egypt. And the evidence here is found in a stone tablet called the Ikhernofret Stela. If a piece of work by a lady called Naomi L. Gunnell, in her piece, the Ikhernofret Stela as Theatre, a Cross-Cultural Comparison. She says that the Ikhernofret Stela has enough similarities to the cycle plays, that if one can consider the individual cycle plays theatre, they must also consider the Ikhernofret Stela as theatre as well. So she makes a comparison between European cycle plays and the passion plays of Osiris as stated in the Ikhernofret Stela, and claims that there are enough elements really within the passion plays to define them as theatre. So Egyptian passion plays were written to celebrate and commemorate significant events, and many were performed at religious events by priests who were really the first actors. Many plays focused on the god Osiris, performed annually at the cities of Abydos, Busiris in the north, and Heliopolis or Onu, the pillar city, also in the north, and one of the most ancient Egyptian cities being also the seat of worship to the sun god Ra. Plays involve staged battles, for instance, and also besides celebrating the passion plays of Osiris, the ancient Egypts also looked to other myths for the telling of their stories, and in many plays which very often involved the use of comedy and satire. Another document is the dramatic Ramesseum papyrus, which is generally accepted as one of the oldest known surviving illustrated papyrus rolls. Contains details of a ceremonial performance in the 12th dynasty, and it's dated around 1980 BC. This play, for instance, told of the tragedy of the pharaoh who was robbed of all his possessions, was whipped, had his many wives unfaithful to him, and eventually became a slave to those that served and advised him. Some plays were performed by lakes and rivers. Performances took on various forms and various themes, but in the main, the public performances of the ancient Egyptians were mainly religious-based, and they involved conflict contained in such matters as death and reincarnation. Performances were based in ritual form and often presented in procession and parade and cavalcade. Performances wore costumes that were made of wool and flax. Some wore senti, a kind of sort of a kilt made of plaited material that was wrapped around the body several times and tied around the waist, with the ends hanging down in front of the legs. They were sometimes constructed of leather as well. Senti was also worn by men. Masks were used also because only men were allowed to perform. The masks that were frequently used, frequently used in performances. In some cases, plays or performances were sometimes linked to the application of medicinal and spiritual healing, very much performed for real and in real time. There are some hieroglyphic texts that are found at the Horus Temple at Edfu, which contain what have been interpreted as staging instructions concerning the actors for a really lavish play where a great number of performers, including props and backdrops, were used. emblematic dancing and drumming were also part of the performance. And that's interesting to note that even as far back as ancient Egypt, if you like, the significant elements of black performance involved mask work, dancing and drumming, and we'll see examples of this later. Ancient.eu, www.ancient.eu has a very interesting, makes very interesting statement regarding festivals in ancient Egypt. Imagine living in a society where you were able to look forward to a festival every couple of months. It must have been good fun. And communal gatherings for worship took place during festivals, and as the Egyptians set a premium on enjoying life, there were many of them throughout the year. These festivals, known as Heb, allowed people to experience their God intimately, give thanks for gifts that were given, and make requests for divine favours. It's important that once we're able to establish that theatre began in ancient Egypt, it's also important to point out that the ancient Egyptians, for the most part across nearly 30 dynasties, were black people and were ruled by black people as well. And this began with the, in around 100 BC, King Menes united both the north and the south regions, and that is when ancient Egyptian civilization generally began. Chancellor Williams, in his book Destruction of Black Civilization, says, during the longest reigns in history, Menes brought about the kind of stability and innovations in administration that not only provided a solid foundation for a first dynasty, but also the economic and social conditions necessary for the more uniform expansion of religion, the arts, crafts, and the mathematical sciences. So not only did black Egyptians, initiate theatre first, they were also responsible for many of the innovations that we have that make up society, such as math, science, the arts, medicine, and so on. We widely accept that the beginning of modern-day civilization began with the ancient Egyptians. But there are other great civilizations as well, and just to name a few, Kush, Nubia, Songhai in the 15th century, Timbuktu and Mali in the 12th and 16th centuries, Zimbabwe in the 13th and 15th centuries, Carthage, and around the 8th and 9th century BC, Punt around 2500 BC, and Aksum, which was founded in the 1st century CE, flourished from the 3rd to the 6th century, and then survived as a much smaller political entity in the 8th century. And following the conquering of ancient Egypt by Alexander the Great and the Greeks, many people migrated from Egypt south and into the north as well, into certain parts of Asia, the Middle East, and even Europe as well. So the development of these great societies took place, and with them black Egyptians, if you like, brought with them their art. So there are unifying factors, really and truly, with the tradition that stemmed from ancient Egypt, that goes right across the continent of Africa, and shared in many respects, in different ways, but all with unifying factors such as physical factors, as we mentioned, dance, drumming, poetry, song, and so on and so forth, but also the social function of this theatre. Black African Theatre and its Social Functions by Bakari Traore is a very good book to read. And one of the things that he says is that in Negro African society, the relationships between the gods and man are based on the relationships between man and man. The gods are ancestors, and the men heroes, the cult heroes, thus hold an important place in tradition. Theatrical or dramatic performances are regulated by the seasonal calendar and the days appointed for festivals. African theatre seeks, therefore, to translate the totality of human manifestations, and this is where we can start to really think about the function of social theatre, of African theatre. There was a social function. There was no sort of art or arts for art's sake, if you like. There was a reason, and it was really about uniting. Bringing people together, but uniting individual people with God and the universe and nature. He goes on to say African theatre seeks to translate the totality of human manifestations of life. It attempts to embrace the content of this totality through ritual and the representations of subjects borrowed from everyday life. It illustrates scenes, religious, social, and even political life. The African theatre is a mirror of life. It registers each event. It expresses every essential of life. The black man expresses himself through poetry and dance. Central to, if you like, traditional Black African theatre, or I'd like to say, I'd prefer to say drama, really and truly, because as we mentioned, theatre is a word that belongs to the Greeks. We're really talking about, dramatic presentations by Black African people, and the tradition of the griot or jelly who was both a historian and an entertainer, whose role was to keep the histories and traditions of the community and tell these stories through music, song and dance. Nothing was written down, as he was the exponent of an oral storytelling tradition whose job was to edify the communities to whom he performed. He'd be a multi-talented individual, able to recite poetry, sing, dance and play instruments, and in some cases be accompanied by a travelling troupe of musicians, dancers and singers. And their job would be to edify, uplift and inspire communities to whom they visited through the telling of fables, folklore and morality tales. He is a music, drumming, song and dance were essential to the delivery of a performance. But so too was the call and response, or as we might frame it today, audience participation. Satirical comedy was a big component, also able to unite warring tribes, mask work, elaborate costume, mime. These of circular space designed to bring people together, and the painted bodies of the performers were also elements of a traditional Black African performance. Some of the earliest evidence of this was uncovered by two French explorers, H. Labouré and Moussa Trevelay, who wrote a book in 1928, Le Theatre Mandique. They claim to have found evidence of a theatre in Mali in the 12th century, and they said these artistic achievements, performance rituals and practices, find their main expression in an abundant oral literature consisting of myths, legends, stories, short pieces in prose or verse, rhymed or free and finally satires. This is no mere puppet show, they say, or exhibition of conjurers, magicians and animal charmers, as in found in certain parts of Africa, but of real drama, with a perfect sense of plot and unity, aiming through its actors to develop a given theme. On these grounds, it can be affirmed that the Malian theatre really exists. So we come up to the transatlantic slave trade between 1500 BC and 1870 BC. I don't think there's much need to kind of chronicle really and truly the horrors really and truly that took place with if you like, European slave traders taking and kidnapping millions of Africans from sort of mainly the west of Africa and taking them to places like South America and North America, obviously, and Europe. Really and truly, as is tradition with Africans, whatever the circumstances, really and truly, we continue to live, we continue to love, we continue to play and laugh and so on, despite very difficult circumstances. And again, what enslaved Africans did was bring their culture with them. Three areas really I think that it's important for us to identify is the impact that enslaved Africans had on American theatre. We also are very interested in the Caribbean and of course Britain as well, and of course the state of play in Africa post, if you like, the transatlantic slave trade. In America, the journey was really quite a different one, and it can be summed up really in the words of Douglas Bennett and Anthony Hill in their work, a historical dictionary of African American history, and they say African American theatre is a vibrant and unique entity enriched by ancient Egyptian rituals, West African folklore and European theatrical practices. A continuum of African folk traditions, this theatre combines storytelling, mythology, rituals, music, song and dance with ancestor worship from ancient times to the present. It has afforded black artists a cultural goldmine to celebrate what it has been like to be an African American in the New World. In the Caribbean, rituals and customs of Africa influenced Caribbean theatre. Carnival, for instance, was introduced by the colonizers, but Africans turned it into a ritual of retained traditions. Festivals emulated African cultural festivals such as Crop Over in Barbados, Jonaku in Jamaica, Tramp in Guyana, and Leroy's Flower Festival in St. Lucia, for instance. Storytelling and pantomime. The oral arts were retained from Africa and they were reimagined to portray life on the plantations. Caribbean artists who trained in colonial theatrical practices were accused of mimicry. Various elements of if you like, Caribbean theatre include masquerade. Masks are used to unite humans with the spirits and allow spirits into the world of humans, and these were performed at specific dates in the year and gave rise to the theatre of complicity. Masks elevated the performance into the world of the spirits by invoking the supernatural. Trinidad Carnival used masks, for instance, in a number of ways, combining dance and mime. Bear and Nancy stories survived from West African folk traditions, from the Akan-speaking people. Eventually, this all led to a fusion of performance styles, emerged combining African culture with, if you like, British culture. But we move on to the Scramble for Africa, 1881 to 1914, and this is a process, beyond the transatlantic slave trade, where the eight European countries decided that they would essentially carve up the continent for themselves and therefore exploit it in terms of its natural resources. We're talking about 10 million square miles, which was shared amongst 7 European countries. This started with David Livingstone, who mentioned the 3 C's in Africa: commerce, Christianity and civilization, and obviously the 4th C. There was a 4th C, and that meant conquest. So the European powers initially were unconvinced, but slowly came around to the idea. Africa was colonized and shared between the British, French, Spanish, Portuguese, Belgium, Germans and Italians. For instance, the British controlled, the South, Egypt, Sudan, whilst the French took a lot of West Africa. British also controlled Nigeria, and the Belgians took the Congo, for instance, all by force and subjugation, naturally. So there was a post-colonial theatre that existed in Africa and the Caribbean. So there were new forms of dramatic performance that were imposed by the colonialists, and this is a, really very interesting period in terms of our kind of development of theatre in Britain, because essentially we were forced to move from the kind of ritual traditions that we were used to and forced to adopt a European type of theatre. So, the difference between ritual, if you like, and secular theatre, which existed then. Ritual performances were part of everyday life for Africans, but were rejected by the colonialists because they had little dialogue. They were not professional like British plays. They were not performed in theatres, not ticketed and open to the whole community. But open to the whole community. Performances went on for days. Theatre was a social occasion and people had to dress appropriately. And it was mentioned that ritual performance obstructed the progress of civilization and were derogatory to the dignity of free men. So these are the reasons why Europeans really justified the re-education, if you like, of black traditional performances in outlawing ritual performance and forcing people to learn about European theatre. Colonisers introduced the English education in an attempt to civilise Africans, and part of this was theatre education. As we say, Africans were forced into being a part of that. It was the church that were originally the pioneers of colonial education and banned masquerades and ritual performances. They were banned often by force. Colonialists embraced the idea because it meant that expats really could feel at home. Remembering that theatre at the time was probably the most popular form of education, of entertainment, and so those that had colonised Africa really and truly wanted to make it their own. So indigenous Africans were introduced to sets, proscenium arch, stages, lights, etc., and had to learn the work of English playwrights. Samani Diakhate and the late Hansel Ndume Ayo say this in their African volume of a World Encyclopedia of Contemporary Theatre. Long before cultural contact with Europe, Black Africa had its very own personal forms of dramatic expression, but in order to understand them, one must banish all notions of theatre as it is thought of in the Euro-American context. Something dependent on text, on halls, on technology and box office returns. In this sense, African tradition has not handed down to us a specific theatrical system, rather it was handed down to us in a series of functions which themselves were modified under colonial influence and were gradually moved away from their roots, though they never were eliminated completely. So this was the state of play really in both Africa and the Caribbean at the time. When we come around to the Windrush period and the migration of many people from the West Indies, from the Caribbean to Britain, obviously here to find work. Many of them brought with them, their theatre. So there are many pioneers. Around that era in the kind of from the 1940s really and truly right through up until today. you know, Norman Beaton, you know, for instance, is one name that we associated with this period. Rudolph Walker is another one. Walter Inca, another. Derek Walcott, another. And theatre companies that came about. Paulette Randall, and this whole period of Black British theatre really kind of took off around that period. And in the 1970s and the 80s, we kind of recognised really a golden age of theatre in Britain. There are dance companies too, Irish Dance Company, Phoenix Dance Company, Ajido, Kukuma, Lansell from the West Midlands and so on. And this was a prominent period, sort of up until the kind of end of the 1990s, really. And in 2001, the Eclipse Report happened, which exposed racism in British theatre, and it was a process of a programme to develop strategies to combat racism in theatre. We believe that you know, a lot of the discrimination that black groups face in British theatre really and truly is partly down to the fact that much of the knowledge which I've just shared with you today has not sort of been made public. It's not part of the sort of Black British or of the British theatre canon, if you like. The contribution that black people have made to theatre in this country has been quite phenomenal, and that's a process that began really from antiquity, from ancient Egypt. And what's very significant about black theatrical practice is that it hasn't changed. It may have changed in terms of the form and style, but really the reasons why you know, black practitioners still continue to work is to continue to tell stories that are designed to uplift, designed to create a union between God and man, if you like, and talk about, discuss our social circumstances and our lives, and seeks to help us to improve on them. And that was and is the purpose of black theatre, really and truly, in so much as that it serves a specific social function. So I hope that's been useful. Just a quick sort of run through some of the main issues that we're concerned about, and throughout the rest of the workshop we're going to see physical examples of this. So thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, John, for a very informative and essential piece of work that you've just shared with us. That presentation, I see that as like the cornerstone of lots of the work we're going to share with you. Now, what we're moving on to now is a practical example. And all of these workshops are now going to be practical examples of some of the elements that John has shared with us. Our first one comes from an acclaimed African drummer, dancer, performer. Her titles are many, many, many. I'm going to introduce to you Angie Amra Anderson. And what she's going to be sharing with us is the importance of the drum in traditional Black African theatre. And she's going to be looking specifically at drumming styles coming from Ghana. So, over to Angie.
Hi, my name is Angie Amra Anderson. People will call me Sister Amra or Auntie Amra if you're younger than me. Now, I'm going to show you some music and drumming from Africa. Now, Africa, as you know, is a massive continent. So I'm actually going to specifically show you some music from Ghana. And one of the music I'm going to show you today, and hopefully you will be playing, is called Ga Hoom. Ga meaning money, Hoom meaning dance. And it comes from the concept of when people came back from harvest and they had a celebration, they would do this drumming and dance to celebrate their annual crop. Now, first thing in African music, which is not really popularized today because of the single performer, is the bell. Now, the bell comes in various types. This is a bell from Ghana, and you see there's a lower and top. Now the top bell is a high sounding bell, and it has what we call the baby, it looks like a baby on a back. So you see the mother here, and there's your baby on the back, yes. Now in African music, the drums are represented as a group of people, but more importantly, a family. You have your mom, dad, brother, sister, baby, and sometime in-laws. So here you have your bell. Now your bell usually conducts all the tempo, the type of rhythm, and the type of connection, because African music, there's a syncopation or integrated patterns what lock around this bell pattern. So for Gahum, the bell sounds like this. Now there's a swing in the bell, a lovely swing. You don't have to hammer at it. Just let it roll. Gahum, ga 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 ga. Now all of the drumming patterns which I'll be showing you today will be around that music until I tell you I'm going to show you something else. Okay. Now to add a little bit more flavor, what you will find is that the bell would also go along with a shekere, or a shaker. Now this is my big mama shaker, and it will sound slightly like this if you was to connect it. Now just see if I can get this wrapped. So here's your shaker, here's your bell, here's your gahum, then your shaker. To build the pattern before the drum rhythm enters. And as you can hear, the shaker is holding the pulse. Now there's obviously many ways and many names for this instrument. It's a gourd, it's dried out, scraped out and dried out inside, and added these wonderful beads. Now this shaker can be played in so many different ways, but as you heard before, that was a pulse. Now, so when you're drumming, always have a pulse in mind, and then you get the technical or a little bit more flattering. So with the bell, it would go like this. Gang, 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 gang. So that's your shekere and your bell. Now these patterns start to build the frame for the drum rhythms, which I'm about to show you next. Here you will find we have an assortment of drums. Now I always say there's 3 spiritual components, maybe even 4 components of a drum. There are very, very many drums in, different name drums in Africa, different sounds. You can see I've got an array of drums here. This is the popular congos. You've got more Gembes. Now djembe is probably the world's most popular African drum. And it's a West African drum found in Gambia, Senegal, Mali, Ghana, and London, Oxford, and absolutely everywhere. So the djembe, which is carved from wood, so you have the spirit of the tree. You have the strings, which is made by the drum maker to tie that. So you have the third spirit of the second spirit of the drum maker. And then you've got this animal skin, and you have the skin of the animal. You also have the spirit of the drummer. So you've got, again, to remember that the bell and the shekere are all the ingredients. It's like having seasoning for your music. First thing first, always tilt the djembe away from you as if you're putting it towards the outside. So as if a marble was to be placed on it, it will roll off nicely. And then what I call the pyramid hands. Place your hand on the drum, making a triangle or shape like a pyramid, and your thumbs, these lovely thumbs, on the rim, the outer rim, in order not to hit it whilst you're drumming. Of course, no rings or anything like that should be played when you're playing the drum. So to go back to Gahu, which is the harvest music, I want you to find the first tone, and is what we call an open tone. And then again, now I want you to find the bass tone, which is in the center of the drum. And I'll probably be working with just those two rhythms. There's various techniques, but we're going to use those two tones today. And you just push. That's your bass sound. So there you go. And then you have your thumbs off. And then on top. Now, I'm a left-hander. Yay! So if you're left-handed, you obviously opposite from if you're right-handed, I'm your mirror image. So what you'll need to do is start most of your patterns until you get a little bit more advanced with your leading hand. So the first Gahu rhythm pattern I'm going to show you starts with your leading hand, and it's a simple pattern that goes like this. Now, just to add some more color, and it's actually a part of the rhythm structure, I want to add the bass after that. Now, notice that your first two notes alternate. Then after that, I want you to use your leading hand to add the last two. So it's 4 notes in all together. Let's not count. Let's use the drum language. Keteng keng ja. Ja will be your bass sound. Ja. Okay? Keteng keng ja. 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 Your bell. Bam 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 So let's do this one again. You've got your hands in your pyramid shape and your fingers towards each other, thumbs resting on the outer rim of the drum, and then we've got 4 notes or drum language, keteng keng ja, and you can move a little bit if you want. Ready? And keteng keng ja. That's one. Just again, keteng keng ja. Breaking it down for you. Keteng keng ja. Keteng keng ja. Keteng keng ja. This is for beginners. Keteng keng ja. Keteng keng ja. Number 2. Keteng keng ja. Keteng keng ja. Keteng keng ja. Keteng keng ja. Let's add another one. Keteng keng ja. Keteng keng ja. Keteng keng ja. Let's another. Now, obviously, it changes in tempo. The more proficient you get, is the more faster you can go. So let's start it very slowly again. And this time I'm going to continue it. One thing I would advise is that you're not rushing towards trying to find new patterns, but to make your sounds as clean as possible, and also to feel that the power of repetition. The ostinato beats, the short beats, are like a network of sounds which knots together in order for you to create this wonderful harmony with the family of drums. So bear in mind, you're not normally alone, and if you are, know it's your spirit and the drum connecting in order to create those sounds. So come again. Ah, now remember the trick. Always say the rhythm. They say in the business, if you can say it, you can play it. So let's start with saying it first. Katang Kenja, 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 Katang Kenja. Okay, so we've got our basic pattern, Katang Kenja, Katang Kenja. So we're going to try it once again, building it, adding one pattern after the other until you're more confident and able to play anytime, anywhere. So the Gahung basic rhythm, hands in pyramid shape, thumbs off, unless you come to the center where you just clip your thumb together slightly, but very relaxed, and then you play your bass notes. So and that we will call Ja. So together, get ready, back straight. Always keep your back straight. Yeah, you have to keep your back straight. Otherwise, you're going to hurt your lower back. Oh, you will hurt your lower back. So here we go again. And. Djembe drumming is that you got to imagine that it's hot, so you don't leave your hands on the drum when you're playing, unless you want mute sounds, but that's, you get a flattened sound. So if you can use flattened sound in there yet. Or if you can, add those textures after understanding the basic tones, because those tones will come in a lot of the time. You hear the bass here, rhythm in a lot of music, Naibingi, 12 try, Rasta music. Now they're just using the two bass notes in the middle. But then they want something to tickle it with, so they'll go back to your tone. Now again, those are just two tones. So let's not get, okay, what's she doing? How can she get over it? We are going to keep it simple, but with the more confident you are on the open sound and the bass sound, is the more rich your flavor of drumming will get and the more beautiful your sound. Remember, drumming is something anybody and everybody can do. It's a matter of practice, but at the same time, remember to use your spirit, chant it out whilst you're saying it, and let's go one more time. Katang Kenja, 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 Katang now with the bell. Now, let's do it again, but this time we're going to add some tempo. Katang Kenja, Katang Kenja, Katang Kenja, Katang Kenja, Katang Kenja. Okay, let's build it for you. First three notes. Katang Kenja, Katang Kenja, Katang Kenja. again. Ding, 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 ding. Now let's add your ja. Ding, ding, 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 ja. Now I'm gonna add the tempo. Ding, ding, ja. Ding, ding, ja. So, that was a flam, by the way. A flam is just two beats just straight after each other and leave it open as quick as possible. So, we've just started the Gahum pattern. Remember, we started with the bell sound. Very important. If you're thinking about where to place the pattern, sweet is it? Ja. 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 Kring, kring, 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 ja. So remember, keep hearing a sound, even if you're going to keep the pulse going, just a ja, 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 kadang, kang, ja, kadang, kang, ja, kadang, kang, ja. That's how you'll find the flavor, because you place that rhythm at a different place and it probably wouldn't be gamu. Okay, so we have the basic. Now here's another simple pattern which goes alongside kadang, kang, ja. So, same thing, pyramid, hands, thumbs off. You know, hit your thumbs because you'll start to get calluses. Yes, if the harder you hit, the more stings you'll get. So you don't need to hit hard. You just need to find the right tone at the right place. And of course, as beginners, you might be trying to fight to get that timing together. So slow it down to your pace. If you want to start, even slower, till you build up. But let's break it down one more time. Ba 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 ba. That's bell. Ba 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 ba. And ja, kadang kang ja, kadang kang ja, kadang kang. Wait. We're building. Get ready with this. Feel comfy. Kadang kang, kadang kang, kadang kang, kadang kang, kadang kang, kadang kang. Start with a one. Start with just one basic pattern. Add another. Add another. believe it, achieve it. Ka-ding, ding, ja. 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 Now feel those beats. It's a rhythm. Keep it steady. Feel the pulse. Keep going. Flow with the rhythm. Ka-ding, ding, ja. 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 Okay, so we've had our bell, our bell, can, 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 can. We had our chicory. We now have the next pattern. This is a recap. Now I'm going to give you another pattern what interlocks with that rhythm. So remember, we're building this family of sounds. So kudeng kenja, kudeng kenja. The rhythm sound is digga digga ding, ja ja ja. Digga digga ding, ja ja ja. Digga digga ding, ja ja ja. Now that's a little bit fast. I'm going to break it down for you really slow. Hands in pyramid shape. Thumbs off, very relaxed. And it's a small roll. Again. And. Now, so that's your first half of the pattern. Again, I'm going to break it really slow. Now the second half is 3 jab notes, 3 notes in the middle. So together it sounds like this. Bit more tempo. Keep it clean. You can play it gentle and find the spices. And this one might be a little bit like cumin. If you want to add some chili, ooh. I'm gonna add the bell. Ka 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 and stop. So let's bring it back in again. You've got first, your hands in pyramid shape. Very relaxed wrists. Nice exercises. Throwing them away from you, cooling your face, as I call it. Warming up your wrists. And then you just relax it and put it into your pyramid shape right there. And so you can see the whole head of the drum. There you go. And then you have your pattern. Sing the pattern in your mind so you can hear it. Or aloud. Digga digga dig. Ja, ja, ja. I'm going to break it down slower. Digga digga dig. Ja, ja, ja. Digga digga dig. Digga digga dig. With the bell. Ga, 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 tempo. So we're going to start to build a tempo. So always gradually build up. Ah, 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 ah. Notice I start to tap my pulse to keep myself in rhythm. Find your way of keeping that. Now the what you hear is the space between the patterns. Now those spaces are really necessary to get the rhythms to interact and also to keep the right measure and the right swing of the actual rhythm. So again, we're going to start slow, hands in pyramid position. Yes, relax, relax shoulders, everything's cool. If you feel stiff, just do a few shoulder crunches. Lean your head to the side, lean your head to the other side. Forward and back a few times. Look to that side, look to that side. And always have a nice center spine, so you're always feeling that you're comfortable right in the middle. Your drum sits tilted away from you. Between your thighs, but not clenching because you can't keep it up for long. Just relaxing. And here we go. Rhythm first in the mind or in the spirit. Digga digga dig, ja ja ja. Digga digga dig, ja ja ja. So, just to recap before we close, we have learned the basics of Gahung rhythm. We know that in African drumming, it's a family of drums, and the families have various sounds. You have your bell, what gives you the signal on and what type of music you're playing. You've got your shekere, what gives you the pulse as well as lots of spices. Then you've got your two rhythms with patterns which I've given to you over the bell. So the bell, gang 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 rhythm. Ja. Other rhythm. Now you can alternate the two. Thank you for joining me. My name is Angie Anderson, and I'm just going to show you that these are the basics, but you can play to your heart content. Find out what sounds go around this drum and enjoy playing African drumming.